It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, May 7th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is talking all things Joel Farabee today.
Should be fun.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky as well. Game off. We got to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just a reminder for all y'all out there, we have our second weekly summer poll for this off season about potential re-upping of contracts for the Flyers. There's a link to that poll in the show notes. It's on our YouTube channel. So make sure you get your voice heard in that poll. The draft lottery is tonight, Russ. I'm excited for this only because I have no expectation going into it that the Flyers will pick anything but 12th. I think that if they go below that, I will throw things just because it means somebody with like a 0.2% chance of moving up in the draft did. Yeah. And then I'll be angry. But barring that, I think we're good. We're pretty even, right?
Yeah, I think the math is pretty strong here. Once in a while, though, I remember one year I had a glitch on the TV and I couldn't even tell who got the first pick. Hopefully the broadcast goes off without a hitch and they don't reveal too much like they did the last time on ESPN, and then we'll be okay.
Yeah, that was wild.
It was.
That whole thing was wild. ESPN is doing it again. It's
and
at
it's taped ahead of
6:30.
time. Like it's taped ahead
Yeah.
of time. So the drawing, I should say, is done ahead of time. So that's why I don't know how you made that mistake, but just don't make it again. It was terrible.
Yeah. 6:30 p.m. on ESPN in the US, Sportsnet and TVAS in Canada. It'll be right before Canes Rangers game 2. And then we can all start figuring out who the Flyers might pick with their first pick of the draft. We won't know where the second pick lies because Florida is unfortunately still in the playoffs. But I think at least having that first pick solidified is a good thing. The NHL award nominee announcements have continued to roll along, and Kelsey McGuire, who is the founder of Philadelphia Blind Hockey, is one of the finalists for the Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award this year. That is so cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, that kind of stuff just warms my heart. And Willie is just the nicest human being on earth. I've met him so many times. So seems like a good fit.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to that announcement. But they're all worthy people.
Sure.
That's what's great. That's what's great about this award is that, like, again, there are no winners, there are no losers. The communities that these people support are the winners here.
Yes.
Just a little side thing. We're recording while the Toronto Maple Leafs are doing their exit day stuff, and it is wild. Of course, the Craig Berube
you knew it would be.
Yeah. The Berube rumors are fast and furious these days. They haven't even said anything about Sheldon Keefe, but
Sheldon Keefe's a goner. Like we all know that. Yeah. I think Craig Berube is going to go to the Devils. That's what I think.
Interesting.
I don't know if the Leafs are going to interview him or not. If they do, he'll certainly want the job, but they may have somebody else like Joel Quenneville in mind, which I think is a mistake, but that's just me, right?
Same.
But that's the Leafs. They probably will make that mistake. So I just look at it and say, I know Berube is getting the job. I think it's going to be close to home, and we'll see. We'll see how that all works out. But the God thing, like Marner saying, well, they treat us like gods here. Well, um, be careful with that one. That one's, you get the God complex, and it's never good in sports to have that.
Nope.
Certainly, the players are elevated, and that's in every market. Uh, I just always get this feeling that Toronto thinks things are greater in Toronto than they are in some other area. And then what they forget about is, yes, you do care about hockey, probably more than most places in the States. But tell that to the people, of Dallas last night. They were standing up the whole third period. I don't know how much better it gets than that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a tremendous game 7 as well.
Yeah.
So moving over to Joel Farabee, we wanted to talk about Joel Farabee first in our individual player kind of season in reviews here, mostly because he's been a huge topic of conversation in terms of how his season went, his development, contribution to the team, all of that. He will be on Team USA at Worlds, so looking forward to seeing more of that. Not sure of the lines yet, but Kevin
No.
Hayes is on that team, so I'm just
Yeah.
saying, maybe they'll be
Uh-huh.
together
Uh-huh.
in that
Uh-huh.
tournament. Their first pre-tournament game is versus Slovakia on Tuesday tonight, or at some point during the day, I guess, because it's over there. But the first game is on Friday versus Sweden in Czechia. Well, for Joel Farabee, looking at his season this year, career high in points, goals, and assists too. But that was really there were 2 different seasons for him. I would say up through the All-Star break and after the All-Star break. So, in the first 47 games he played, 17 goals, 22 assists, was a plus 11. Over the final 35 games, 5 goals, 6 assists, and a minus 24. That is a steep drop off.
It is. So a couple things. I just went back and looked where I had Farabee in the draft, and I ranked him 8th. So like behind Quinn Hughes, ahead of Evan Bouchard, before like a Matthias Samuelson, before a Keandre Miller. And I think, I actually think I ranked him right, because a lot of times if you're within 5, 6 spots, it's good, and they got him 14th. I think what's happened with Farabee, 2 things. I think people had wild expectations for him. I was thinking, 55, 60 points because he has a great shot. Still has a great shot. But it's hard to score those points, Rachel, when you're on the 4th line for, let's say, 25% or 30% or even higher of the second half of that season. Like, it's just, and no power play, right? He's taken off the power play for a while. I mean,
Mhm.
those things impact your numbers, yet he still ended up with 50 points, even after the neck injury. And I don't understand anybody who could be down on him, because he had 22 goals, most goals he's ever had. Definitely could be a 25 goal scorer, and probably could be a 30. And I think that's the zenith for him. I think 30. I think that's where I was thinking with the 60 points. Like,
Right.
if he's a 30-30 guy. And so I do think that's possible for him. But if he gets played on a 4th line, he's going to get 40 points next year, just because of opportunity.
Right. So I think, like, for me, while that drop off was not great, I do think it fell along the team as a whole for that portion of time. A lot of guys scoring went down, and we talked about it endlessly that these guys are just gassed, right?
Right.
And so, there was an exhaustion, there was a getting beat up from blocking shots factor. There was something going on with the team as a whole that Farabee, I think, just was indicative of, and not necessarily, he did not stand out as being especially negative to me. Now, you could maybe argue that the power play situation did stand out because the power play was that bad, and Farabee is supposed to be a power play specialist, and I get that. But I would say that's the only part of his game that stood out to me as, being a negative impact on the team as a whole relative to everybody else that was out there.
Yeah, I think that, there was some talk about his own entries. Maybe he lost some confidence for a little while. I think that's true. I think a bunch of players did. We have to remember he's still 24. This is the best year of his career. He's, it's hard for me to be overly critical about this guy because I think he had a good year. Now, do I think he satisfied the coach? No, or he wouldn't have been on the fourth line. So I do think there could be trouble down the line for him, and that dumbfounds me. But I'm not the coach, right? So there you go.
Right. So we're going to dig a little bit more into his specific stats, his room for improvement, and what do we do with him heading into next season. All of that coming up next. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying, flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much more to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mind games and mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. On tomorrow's show, we'll be answering your mailbag questions, so get them in. We are recording after the draft lottery takes place. So if you've got draft related questions, lottery related questions, get them in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, send us a message on Twitter, or comment over on YouTube. So more on Joel Farabee. I think, for me, you look at his stats for the season as a whole, to your point about like his numbers were really good. He was at 0.99 goals per 60 for the season. That is really good.
That's good.
And yeah, and third on the team in points per 60 at 5-on-5.
Hmm.
And, if you look at him compared to the regulars in the lineup, like he is up there in most of the stats. You look at his shooting percentage, it was slightly higher than it was for him in the previous season. So that was an improvement. And that was in all situations. Now, 5-on-5, it was down a little bit. But
Hmm.
again, it was the highest of all the team regular, quote unquote, regulars at 12.16. And I know that like better than mud is not necessarily great because we all know how the shooting percentage of the Flyers was this season. It was dreadful, but Joel Farabee still managed to be near the top of the heap in that category despite having that dreadful last third to the season.
Yeah, I mean, he had 20 even strength goals. Uh, his takeaways were the same as giveaways, which is fine. He had more blocks than he had the year before. He had
Mhm.
taken more shots than the year before. His ice time, though, dropped about 45 seconds compared to the
Right.
year before. And I'm telling you, that's the
That's the
story here.
coach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the real
And I
story here.
So if you look at that ice time being taken away, like that's, a potential 3 to 4 more goals over the course
Right.
of the season, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for a season where, this is 2 seasons in a row where he played all 82 games
Yeah.
with that surgery recovery
No Flyers,
situation.
other Flyers done that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it seems unlikely, I gotta
Yeah.
say. Um, yeah, so I feel like given everything that happened with him, like I don't think you can write this season off as bad for Joel Farabee.
No. No, but some will. And I'm gonna just choose to ignore that because I just don't think it's fair. Um, I think it's just one of those things that, hey, you know what? Let's pump the brakes a little on him. let's get the coach to give him another chance. Let's look at everything, with the right lens. Yeah, nobody else has had 82 the last two. Kate's had it last year. He didn't have it this year, and then uh,
Yeah,
yeah, and Provorov was the only other one last year besides
last year.
Farabee. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's a very underrated fact that you had just made,
yeah,
and it's a big deal because availability is the most important thing in this league.
right. And he would not only did he make it through all of the games in terms of being healthy enough to play, but despite everything that happened this season, coach never benched him.
Right, but he was annoyed with them though.
Yeah, but then he never took that additional step like he did with
No,
almost everybody else he was mad at.
that's fair. That's a fair point too. So yeah, I mean, is there room for improvement? Absolutely. He's, at 24, there's still room for improvement. He could play a little smarter at times, but he is one of the better hockey IQ guys that they have. But once in a while, you'll see a bad turnover. That's fine. I mean, he could clean that up. He could definitely, when he gets the chance, play a little better on the power play, but nobody does on this team. So I probably shouldn't even mention anything power play. And he's going to be dependent on his line mates a little bit.
Yeah,
A few
I
years ago,
think
Claude
so.
Giroux thought he was going to be the next great Flyer, and maybe Claude was still right, but he's going to have better line mates to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think so. And Danny Briere on Exit Day mentioned that Farabee, specifically was a guy who's looking to take a bigger step next season, especially given the expectations for him going into this season, which I thought the expectations were maybe a little overblown just
They
again
were.
because of the surgery recovery. But I can certainly understand like next season having much higher
Yeah,
expectations.
I'm
And
with him on that.
yeah, and so when he was asked specifically about those expectations for himself going into next season, he mentioned wanting to be able to better hold on to pucks down low and skate away from checks. I think he did better on that front this season, but if he thinks he can improve more, God bless him for that. But if he took less hits per 60 this year than he
That's
did
good.
last year, so that shows improvement on that stat for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, he is a gamer. He always shows up to play. You never see him take a shift off. I mean, it's hard to get guys like that. In the offseason, he works out really hard. I mean, he's got a great work ethic. I really believe that. Otherwise, I don't think he'd have come back as strong, from this next surgery. I think he's the one that had the same surgery as Eichel. And, he's not Jack Eichel, but he's he's not that far off from it as far as how he is as a player compared to before the neck surgery. So yeah, I still think there's upside with him where I don't know if I would have said that
Right.
as he was getting the surgery because it was a great unknown, right? We just didn't know.
Right, and that's where I think, like, going into next season with higher expectations is a good thing, and I think it's good for him. Like,
Yeah,
he does need to get pushed a little bit. I think the other thing that he mentioned, which I think is a fair self-assessment, he talked about not getting rid of the puck as often and making a play instead, and I think
right.
that's something, and that comes with the confidence issue that you were talking about.
And players again, if he doesn't feel like he's got somebody he could really, vibe with, then yeah, I guess he's gonna have to do that. But I think he was trying to be selfless in some of these situations because, especially when you're on the fourth line, because it's like, you're trying to get a give and go going. I mean, I get it.
Right. And of course, Joel Farabee is gracious as ever. And, when asked about his role on the team specifically, of course, he's going to say, I can play anywhere. And he
Yeah,
did play up and down the lineup because that's what they all say, because
yeah,
you can't really complain about these things. But, he does want to solidify a role in the top six. And I think he
yes,
can do it. And I think, he's the guy, that's been in Voorhees all summer since jump and training and doing all of his off-season work around the Flyers organization. And this is an opportunity this summer to do all of that hard work again and have it go somewhere.
Yeah, I think he could be a second line guy, and I think if he plays this summer right, I think it all could happen for him, and it would be nice to see. It would, and again, I think he's earning his money. I don't think like I said, I just think people were frustrated with this season anyhow at the end, so I just think things were said that maybe were a little harsh.
Yeah, and I think, the contract is a big contract, and, there's no way around that. But that being said, he earned the contract at the time that he signed it. And I think that, again, we have to take that surgery into consideration
Plus,
and
I
say,
think on this
maybe.
contract they were paying for future results, not past results,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
there's still future there.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that, you have to give him this next year at least before you start complaining about that contract in
Right.
any reasonable
There's other
way.
contracts to complain about. Leave his
Oh,
alone for the
yes.
moment.
Exactly. Exactly. Uh, to wrap up Joel Farabee, is there any way they can use him better on the ice next season, you think?
Yeah. Uh, at minimum, third line, possibly second line, uh, at least second power play, and it's got to be in the 17-minute mark. He can't be
Yeah.
16:01 again. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think give him more ice time is the answer I have for that, and
Yeah.
see where he is if you give him where he can thrive in terms of his
Yeah.
role and ice time. But yeah, I think, Joel Farabee did better than some people would say, and I look forward to seeing what he can do next season. To wrap up the show, we are going to wrap up the U18 tournament and talk a little bit about our London Knights guys over in the OHL.
It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel's your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. I would take the Knicks over the Pacers for this series. I have a feeling. Okay. What are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/locked on and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right. The U18s are officially over with Canada winning the gold medal, she says through gritted teeth. I think that, man, I think Canada really put a strong game together and just figured out a way around USA's top skills. And, USA did not take advantage of the power play here.
No. That was to me the biggest egregious thing. I know everybody wants to blame Trevor Connolly and say, "Oh yeah, he lost the game." It led to the loss of the game, but missing on those power plays did not help. Look, the US had the lead. It happened. The penalty happened. It's in the heat of battle. I get it. It happens. I'm certainly not going to blame a 17-year-old on losing, the gold medal on that, especially when it was 5-4 with still, I don't know what, like 3.5 minutes to go or something.
Something
There,
like that. Yeah.
there was still time to tie up that game. But Canada, did a good job. Uh, that's the thing. It's just like you look at it and you say, all right, look, sometimes these things happen, but they still were in the game. It didn't take them completely out of the game. And Carter George was great. Like he was great for Canada. Like that's the best goaltending performance I've seen for a Canadian goalie in a while in junior hockey. So he was a difference maker too. McKenna was great, obviously. They had Martone.
I was gonna say, we
Yeah,
have to talk about Gavin McKenna
yeah,
there.
McKenna, Martone, those guys are great too. But Carter George really stepped up, and I think he really helped his draft stock too.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that uh, to me, nobody made a huge impact on this tournament enough to move them mountains in the draft. But who do you think did themselves the biggest favor?
The biggest favor I think of anybody uh before that penalty was probably Trevor Connolly, but now since then, probably not. So I'm going to say it's Teddy Stiga. I think, again, we've talked about him all year because I love Teddy Stiga, right? So I forced him on our show. Um, People were putting him in the third round even as recently as a month ago. I think he's top 15 now. I think he's proved it. He had some big plays. I think Brody Zemer has snuck into the first round at the bottom. Again, he had 3 goals in the tournament. He was the captain. He had a really good tournament. He's probably like third or fourth in points, something like that. So I think he did himself a great favor. I think for the Swedes, Alphon Frege, the defenseman, I think maybe going to be in the early second now. Melvin Fernstrom, who's a goal scorer, a sniper, maybe late second. Constantinius, I think, for whatever reason, people were vacillating with him during the season. We stayed pretty steady on this show with him, and we still will do that. He's going to the World Championships. He played in World Juniors, and he just played in the U18 Men's Worlds. He's following the Jack Hughes path. All that said, I don't believe he's ready for the NHL. And I know there is that talk already. So some people will say that, well, yeah, I think he can play. No, I think he can play in the AHL. That's where I think he should start, and then let that prove out. Because we've seen, like Slafkovsky should have started in the AHL as an example. And I feel that way, same way for Hellenius, who's a terrific player. Tomas Galvis, who had a point with Czechia, I really still like him as a defenseman and think he could be a late second. Adam, I think it's Dzeko. Big 6'5" kid that can score. I'm hoping to interview him soon. I think he's got top 9 potential. Needs a little work on skating for Czechia. Jamiro, Raber. I remember we talked about him. I had seen him at the Five Nations, liked it.
Right.
He was really good with Switzerland, second in scoring, like 6 points. Yeah, I think he could be late second, third, early third. So I think he helped himself. Yzerman, I think, helped himself from not slipping. He's a goal scorer. He scored his goals. He set the record, Cole Caulfield's record. That was a big deal. So, yeah, I think that was the thing, too.
Do you think the expectations are so high on him that there's only down?
Yes.
And that's really
Yeah,
so he just had to maintain.
He had to maintain at least the goal scoring. So if they picked apart the rest of his game, that's okay because he's scoring goals. And he did.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. That is for sure. We'll be talking more about the draft later in the week, kind of focusing on the round 1 defensemen on Thursday's show. So stay tuned for that, and we'll add them all to our draft coverage spreadsheet. Link to that in the show notes. The OHL playoffs continue. London advanced to the finals of the OHL playoffs, winning over Saginaw 4-2. We don't know the winner of Oshawa and North Bay. One of those two will be their opponent in the final.
And don't ask me. I don't follow the league close enough. I don't. Sometimes, I follow players, right? So I know players for the draft and everything. And sometimes I will go to the Memorial Cup. I've been to 3 or 4, and I will fly in like an American should, and doesn't really cover all the leagues, just covers the prospects. But it won't happen this year. But I still love the Mem Cup.
Yeah, this tournament for London has been interesting just because they've managed to be successful, but sometimes by the skin of their teeth, and they play an ugly, ugly game overall. They do have their skill guys, that's for sure. They get into a mess of trouble. They've got a couple of guys suspended for 5 games, won't be available until
That's a lot.
like late in the mid-late finals right now. They've already missed 1 or 2 games at this point. And luckily it's not Denver Barkey or Oliver Bonk because we don't want those guys to rack up the PIMS. But Denver Barkey has had a good but not great playoffs. He had a great season.
He did.
He's 13th in playoff points in the OHL, 3 goals, 13 assists.
So and this is where evaluation matters. Playoffs matter. It counts heavier than the regular season. And I never thought Barkey could be a first-line guy. So I think he's falling in line with what I think he might be. And so that's fine. I think he's doing well.
Right. And so you just have to temper your expectation because the competition level, just like in the NHL, it goes up for the playoffs. And this is where Barkey has a lot more room to grow. And that's fine. He's got a little bit of time. So just worthy
Maybe
to know.
Maybe not grow height-wise. He's not the biggest guy. Well, he'll grow every other way.
True. That's true. Bonk is having a solid playoff as well. 4
Yeah.
goals, 4 assists in 14 games for a defenseman. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, again, for a guy who's playing the bumper, that's what,
Mhm.
brought his numbers up for the offense
Artificially, yeah.
artificially, yeah, offensively. And I don't think he'll play the bumper in the NHL, but he's going to play really good defense. And I think he's a second pairing guy. Maybe he'll turn into a first pair, but I think he's a really good second pairing guy who will give you like 45 points. And so, for me, I hear those numbers. I say, hey, he's right on schedule.
Yep, exactly, exactly. So really excited to see how London does in these finals, and are they going to go to the Memorial Cup? We would love to see that. So we will keep an eye on that tournament as well. That will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow talking draft lottery results and have your mailbag questions answered. So
Everybody get
get
their
them
lucky
in.
whatever ready for tomorrow
Yeah,
night.
yeah, how many spins on Tankathon does it take to get the Flyers to move up? Um, get those mailbag questions in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIA.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.